I'll be making buttermilk pancakes. They are light and airy and melt in your mouth. You're really going to enjoy these. I use buttermilk. You can use regular milk. However, your measurements might differ than what this recipe calls for. I use a fine granulated sugar, flour, baking powder, baking soda, eggs, and vanilla extract. Before I measure my flour, I always give it a toss. That way when I measure, it's a little bit more accurate because the flour is not so compressed. I will be measuring 2 cups of all-purpose flour. I'm using 2 teaspoons of baking powder. Then 1.5 teaspoons of baking soda. Next, I'm going to sift the dry ingredients together. If you don't have a sifter, just go ahead and whisk. Sifting does make a lighter mixture. Next, I'll be melting 4 tablespoons of butter. Microwave to melt my butter. It's quick, takes about 50 seconds, but each microwave is a little bit different, so just keep an eye on it. Next, we'll crack 2 eggs. I like to whisk them together before I pour them into the wet batter. My butter is now melted. To the butter, I'm going to add 3 tablespoons of granulated sugar. Now it's time to whisk. There's no set time or how quickly you whisk. It's just a matter of making sure the butter and the sugar comes together, and you'll see that it gets a lot smoother as you keep whisking. I would say it takes about 60 seconds, maybe a little longer depending on how quick you are. Next, I'm going to put 1/2 teaspoon of salt into the butter sugar mixture, and after that you're just going to whisk until it combines. Next, buttermilk. I'm going to add 2 cups into the butter sugar mixture, and I add this a little bit at a time so it doesn't get too messy as I whip in the buttermilk. It's just easier to keep it clean. Once I've added all the buttermilk, I'm now going to whisk in the 2 eggs. Now I'll be adding 1.5 teaspoon of vanilla extract. If you don't have more than 1 teaspoon or less than a teaspoon, don't worry, you'll be fine. It just adds a little bit of extra flavoring. Now that our wet and dry ingredients are complete, we want to combine the 2 together. It's important to not overwork your batter. I do not like to use a whisk to combine the ingredients. I prefer to use a spatula, and I slowly will fold in the dry ingredients so that I don't overwork this batter. I did speed the video processing. However, I am mixing all this together slowly. Just might appear that I'm fast because I sped up the video motion. As you can see, it's pretty chunky, but you'll just keep folding. I know I'm done mixing my batter when I no longer see any dry flour at the bottom of the bowl. Once it's been combined, we are going to let this batter sit for 10 minutes. Yes, 10 minutes. Just let it sit there. You can cover it with a towel if you would like. It's a pretty thick batter. Once we've let it sit for 10 minutes, we're going to then add additional liquid to thin it out. But it's important to have this time to wait. Waiting the 10 minutes actually allowed the liquid to thin out the batter naturally. So that's why we want to give it some time to wait. That way when we add our extra liquid, we'll have a better measurement. I add about a tablespoon of milk or buttermilk. I only had a little bit of buttermilk left, so I'm using regular milk. And as I'm combining, I'm just making sure everything's mixed well. And then after each process, I'm going to add an additional tablespoon until I get the right consistency. It's still too thick. I want the batter to drip off the spatula in a continuous stream. Typically, I find that I'm adding about 1/4 cup of extra liquid, be your buttermilk or regular milk, until I get that consistency. However, sometimes I don't need a full 1/4 cup. That's why I like to add roughly 1 tablespoon at a time. And as you can see, this batter is gradually getting a little bit thinner, and you're going to start seeing the difference, if you can't already, how that batter is dripping off the spatula. See, that's getting nice and has a great flow. I added a dash more milk, and it eventually got to that perfect consistency that I was looking for. Now that I'm at the consistency and flow that I like in my batter, I'm going to let it sit for 5 minutes. 5 more minutes, and then we'll be ready to get this cooking on the pan. 5 minutes is up, and this is what the batter looks like. Nice continuous flow. I'm really happy with it. You want to preheat your pan on a medium-low heat before you start placing your batter into the pan. I do about 1/4 cup of batter into my pan, and once I see some bubbles forming, I know it's time to flip. It takes about 1 minute or so before it's ready to flip, and then another maybe 30 seconds on the other side. Depending on the type of pan you're using, I'm using a cast iron pan. Therefore, I did need to add a little bit of oil, and I used a paper towel and got my pan a little bit wet. But if you're using a non-stick pan, most likely you won't need to put any oil, and you really only need to do it once in a cast iron pan. Once you flip your pancake, like I said, it's gonna be about 30 seconds maybe before it's ready to be taken off. You'll notice that it gets a little puffy in the middle. It's usually a good indicator it's done. There you have it. That is my recipe for buttermilk pancakes. Now all you need is some maple syrup and pour it on and just start eating. They melt in your mouth. I find this to be a big winner with my daughter. She loves these pancakes, asks for them quite often. So I hope you enjoyed as much as we do. Well, I'm stuffed. I cannot eat another bite.